So, Benjamin, would you kindly, you asked to give a brief introduction on Van Gogh TV, would you kindly kick off the evening with that?
Thanks, Tilman. Yeah, so we started in the early 80s with exploring television in several projects. The first one was Republic TV, 1989. Well, we had something before that, but the first real broadcast was 89 in Ars Electronica Linz. And we developed different formats over the years. And in 1992, I mean, there was this really beautiful project, Hotel Pompino, that I just was thinking about a little bit because it had a very strong performance character. But then in 1992, Documenta 9, Jan Hoot invited us to come to Kassel. And we did so, built up a small container city there. And actually started to broadcast 100 days every day, about 7 hours. So altogether 700 hours of broadcast. The idea was, as Tilman already explained, is to transform the broadcast from a one-to-many broadcast to a many-to-many broadcast. So follow the Brecht radio theory, which he formulated, I think, in 1932. The idea was to make every receiver into a transmitter. And this was like the core idea behind it. So we developed about 20 different formats of interactivity that we broadcasted daily through the 3-sat network all over Europe. Plus we had our own satellite from the European Space Agency, which was a half-crippled satellite called Olympus, which gave us access to quite a different field of people that were kind of later ham radio operators that switched to TV. The formats we developed were from like a basic communication module called Coffee House, which allowed for voices with telephone, for modems, and different other media like entry point in Kassel, and also a fax receiver through a Next computer. And this was one of the like really successful modules through the project. And then we had other stuff like where actually the audience could, in different formats, I mean, this goes probably too deep to explain all the different formats, but the core idea was always to use the touch tone interface of the telephone to control something in the studio and broadcast it so that the communication loop is closed. We had about 30 different piazzettas all over the world, United States, Japan, all over Europe, Russia, and they all produce different programs and different ideas about how to use that medium that we kind of successfully, turned into that communication system. What else? I think that's about it. The broadcast lasted from the beginning of Documenta until the very end, which was, I think, in September. Because the interaction was mainly through telephone and using the keypad of the telephone to control stuff in the studio, we had several overloads of the Kassel telephone system with about more than 110,000 callers every hour, which was quite amazing for everybody. We had lots of sponsoring from the industry, Deutsche Telekom, EDS, several computer companies that exist today and don't exist today. And the idea of them was to kind of check out their developed technology into some new system, which we kind of provided. We were about 25 people. We moved daily from Hannover Schmünden, where we had rented a house. So it was also a very social situation between us. Broadcasting every day live was kind of exhausting. So we were quite exhausted financially and emotionally and physically after the project. And continued with several other stuff. Like in '93, we repeated the same thing in Tokyo in a cooperation with NHK. In '94, we did the service area AI, which was a transformation of Piazza Virtuale into a 3D virtual space, which allowed through a developed by us, we developed a browser that allowed multimedia communication through the network. And people had an avatar in the virtual space and could control that. Yeah, that's about the scope of that I would like to talk to about. Sorry.
All right, thank you very much. I keep getting messages from Facebook that people like this video, so there must be a way to find it on Facebook. I'm at my wit's end here. I shared it with everybody. We published it on the webpage of this event. So yeah, I don't know who's actually watching us right now except for ourselves, but as we are recording this conversation right now, we will publish it on the website of Kunstraum, or the Facebook site of Kunstraum later on, and on YouTube. And if you cannot enter for some reason now, you can watch it later. So let's begin with the trailer. Yeah, Julian, would you kindly show us the trailer that we made for our research project?
Yeah, all right. Please let me know if video and audio are working.
Yeah, screen sharing works.
Ich hätte ein 25-teiliges Ich hätte ein 27-teiliges
Wir hatten ja diese 100 Tage von Dreisat als verschiedene Zeitfenster zugewiesen gekriegt und parallel dazu gab es ja die Ausstrahlung auf Olympus. Ich glaube, dass wir im Schnitt 7 Stunden am Tag gesendet haben.
Willkommen in unserer Schule. Mein Name ist Professor Fox und ich werde Ihnen in der nächsten Zeit das ABC der Piazza Virtuale beibringen. Sie werden malen, musizieren und auch schreiben lernen, auf eine ganz neue Art. Sie werden Maschinen steuern, die Sie vorher noch nie gesehen haben. Lernen, lernen und nochmals lernen.
Fernsehen war ja für uns nur eine Abstrahlfläche. Also was uns interessiert hat, war ja der Raum dahinter, also der Kommunikationsbereich.
Also wir haben hier die Sendung Coffee House. Coffee House hat 3 verschiedene Ebenen. Da sind die Voice Lines. Das heißt, da können Leute über Stimme miteinander sprechen. Dann haben wir die Modem Lines. Das sind die unten in Gelb in diesem viereckigen Fenster sind. Und da, wo ich jetzt bin, ist normalerweise das Fax. Das heißt, da können Leute Faxe hinschicken und so diese 3 Ebenen miteinander kommunizieren.
Also ich kann es jetzt nicht in Tagen mehr abschätzen, die Erinnerung habe ich nicht, aber es waren bestimmt über 20 Tage, wo jede Sendung nur Hallo, 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 Hallo. Das war der Hallo-Sender.
Hallo, ist Andreas.
Morgen!
Moin, moin.
Ist mein Name immer noch.
Morgen, wie geht's denn so?
Möchtet ihr euch alle tatsächlich das Armutszeugnis ausstellen und immer nur Hallo sagen?
Alle Menschen haben uns beschimpft, belächelt, lächerlich gemacht. Und ich fand, genau das wollten wir, nämlich den Bodensatz erreichen, aus dem Kultur sich entwickeln kann.
Es ist okay so. Was habt ihr vor für nächste Woche? Bremen.
All die Sachen, die heute uns auf den Tisch fallen, die sind damals im Ansatz erkennbar gewesen. Dass jemand das ausnutzt, um Dinge zu verkünden oder von sich zu geben, die nicht in Ordnung sind.
Mach deinen Plattenspieler jetzt an, genau jetzt. Leg dir den Sound drauf, den du gut findest und tanz. Feier heute einfach. Heute ist ein unheimlich besonderer Tag.
Ich feiere nächste Woche.
Was feierst du denn nächste Woche?
Meine Hochzeit.
Deine Hochzeit, yo!
Van Gogh TV haben verschiedene Strömungen der Avantgarde, von der Performance über die Medienkunst sozusagen vorangebracht, haben dadurch eben geschafft, Errungenschaften der einen Kunstform zur Errungenschaft der anderen Kunstform zu werden und haben mit diesen hybriden Formen und Übertragungen etwas vorbereitet, was dann eine neue Bewegung in den sozialen Medien mit der neuen technischen Möglichkeit der Internet abgeschöpft haben.
Ja, danke schön. Das war so ein kleiner Einblick in das Programm und in die Interviews, die wir für unser Rechercheprojekt gemacht haben. Und was wir im Folgenden machen werden, ist uns einige Programmsegmente von Piazza Virtuale ansehen. Und eins der spektakulärsten Programmsegmente war sicher die Roboterkamera, die in diesem Studio, aus dem gesendet wurde, unter der Decke befestigt war. Also Gogh TV hat aus Kassel, aus so einem selbstgebauten Containerstudio gesendet. Das stand direkt neben dem Fridericianum und hat jeden Tag auf Dreisat morgens 1,5 Stunden so im Schnitt eine Sendung gemacht und dann am Wochenende auch in der Nacht von Freitag auf Samstag. Und, oh, I'm sorry, I should be speaking English. We're going to watch first a clip from a segment of Piazza Virtuale that's quite spectacular. It shows the robot camera that was installed in the studio of Gogh TV under the ceiling. The studio was a bunch of containers with a lot of equipment in it right next to Fridericianum in Kassel, and from there they conducted a daily show on German public television and also broadcast via satellite, and on the weekends they had also on public television 6 or 7 hours sometimes at night. And yeah, part of the programming that was available or that was shown in this program was the robot camera, and this is the first clip we are going to watch. So Julian, please. Und schalte bitte dann auch mal diesen Streifen da unten weg.
Ich bin die computergesteuerte Roboterkamera der Piazza Virtuale. Ich überwache das Geschehen auf dem Schauplatz der Kunst. Ihr könnt mich per Tastendruck in die gewünschte Richtung lenken, schwenken, könnt zoomen, beamen und mit den Leuten sprechen, auf die ihr mich richtet. Das ist der totale Überblick. Einfach 0561 719040 wählen und los geht's. Alles klar? Wunderbar.
Hallo? Ja, hallo? Ja, heute.
Ja, sehr gut, genau.
Wo bist du denn?
Ja, suche ein bisschen. Ja, genau, noch ein bisschen, nicht schlechte Richtung. Ja, hier.
Morgen.
Also. Morgen. Ja, du kannst also mit der Kamera kannst du jetzt durchs Studio fahren und dir das Studio angucken, wenn du Lust hast. Und zwar, siehst du ja da unten, genau, also da kannst du die Tasten drücken, dann weißt du, was fährt. Da hast du jetzt im Blick die Studioleitung.
Mhm.
Wunderbar. Also
Wo wird gesendet?
Genau, da sind diese ganzen Computer und da läuft eigentlich so das meiste ab.
Ja. Hallo. Hallo jeder.
Na, alles klar?
Jo.
Hey, grüß mal hier rüber.
Wer bist du denn?
Mike.
Was machst du
Aus
so?
Geseke. In Weltstadt.
Weltstadt Görike?
Geseke.
Gedecke?
G-E-S-E.
Also EDK, alles klar. EDK.
Jo.
Sag mal, Mike.
Was?
Hast du schulfrei heute oder warum bist du zu Hause?
Ja, sicher. Nordrhein-Westfalen.
Ach, Nordrhein-Westfalen?
Jo.
Ja. Und was machst du so in der Schule? Welche Klasse und so?
Ja, ich bin jetzt im 9. gekommen.
Die 9.
Ja.
Das heißt, du bist 14.
Ich hab eine Ehrenrunde gedreht.
15.
Ja.
Tja.
Muss sein.
Sag mal, Mike, was interessiert dich denn so? Bist du Skateboardfahrer?
Nee, hör bloß auf.
Aber Computerfreak oder so?
Was?
Interessiert dich ein Computer?
Ja, voll. Volles Rohr. Ich hab zu Hause einen Amiga.
Aha.
Früher hatte ich so einen C64. Jetzt.
Komm, wir gucken uns mal ein bisschen Studio zusammen an.
Jo.
Katrin sagt dir das ein bisschen.
Musst du irgendwie
Aber du kannst auch weiter erzählen, ne?
Ja.
Weil hören tun wir uns auch trotzdem.
Was?
Hören tun wir uns auch trotzdem, auch wenn du hier nicht bist mit der Kamera.
Kann man da weiter?
Genau, in die andere Richtung, da kannst du jetzt ganz durchfahren.
4.
4.
6. 6.
Die andere, genau. Kannst du noch weiter?
Oh.
Ja. Hallo? Genau, da vorne sitzt der Wolfgang, der arbeitet jetzt schon.
Moin.
Morgenstund hat Gold im Mund.
Und ansonsten ist es hier noch relativ leer, weil es noch relativ früh ist.
Ja.
Was ist da?
Wo?
Schon gefrühstückt.
Wo guckst du jetzt hin?
Ja, da. So Regale.
Regale, ja, da stehen halt auch noch mal so ein paar Monitore rum und Fernseher. Und da geht's dann nach draußen. Hier wird auch gerade eine Tür geöffnet.
Schmeckt's denn wenigstens?
Hm? Ob es was?
Martin da.
Nochmal, was?
Da sitzt.
Ja, was möchtest du von ihm?
Er war am Frühstücken.
Achso, hast du schon gefrühstückt, Wolfgang?
Ich bin gerade dabei.
Ja, schmeckt.
Unsere Chefköchin ist noch nicht eingetrudelt heute.
Also ein Kaffee, noch nichts zu
Ich
essen.
flieg gleich raus.
Ah, echt? Ja, dann guck dir nochmal einen letzten Überblick.
Ja, das war eine der technischen Großleistungen bei dem Projekt, diese Roboterkamera, die man über die Tastatur des Telefons aus dem Wohnzimmer steuern konnte. Wer von den damals Beteiligten möchte dazu was erzählen, wie es dazu, sorry, I keep speaking German. Who of those involved back then wants to share something about this, this device, the robot camera?
First of all, I want to mention Nick Baginski, who built it.
An artist from Hamburg, right?
Right. Still in Hamburg, I think.
Yeah. Anything else? What was that like to have a camera watching you and sometimes transmitting what was going on right around you? I mean, pretty much like what we are doing now, I guess. But at that time, of course, this was a very novel concept to put something like that on television in particular. What are some of your memories about that?
I mean, the basic idea was to make transparent what happened in the studio. So we used surveillance cameras, and the robot camera was part of that surveillance system that showed the audience what happened in the studio. I mean, like normally that's not super transparent because the transmitters or the people that work for the transmitter try to hide what they do there, and we try to make that obvious somehow. We are human beings. We eat breakfast. We work, we sleep, whatever, and this was the idea to make this more human, actually.
Mm. What's interesting is that people were not just able to direct the camera, but also communicate with the people in the studio.
Yes,
Yeah,
Tilman.
Mike?
Tilman. Well, I think what is important, besides the interactive aspect which we had in our program, which was the first time it happened in this way on the platform of television, with all the interfaces we built, that we were a group of technicians, hackers, artists who worked together. For example, Nick Baginski, who made the robot camera, is a quite famous artist for his machine art. So we had contact to machine artists, and everybody who was part of the group or the surrounding came in with some ideas and said, yeah, is this possible? Can we do this? Can we program this? Is it possible? So the fact of having technicians, nerds, artists, ideas, and everything coming together and putting this into a product. Let's say we just achieved in Piazza Virtuale half of the products we were imagining, which we were trying to realize. We had too much work. We had really a lot of work. So we finished half of it, and what was finished went online. And then partly it was a learning process of the audience how to react on it. So on the beginning, they were a bit lost on Hello and didn't know what to do, didn't know how to use the program. So it was a learning process. It was a kind of school, online life school, which ran over 3 months on different TV stations and in chats and on some Olympus satellites, so people could pull down the program. So it was in 30, 40 countries you could see this program.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one of the formats that were went on for a very long time, but I've mentioned in the very first, yes, Karel, we can't hear you right now. Can you turn on the sound? Karel, you have to turn on the sound. Or Julian, can you turn him on?
No, sound, no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I mean, the Piazza Virtuale was a virtual psychiatry. It was the first public open therapy session for the beautiful and happy viewer, which was for centuries destroyed by the public media. And Piazza Virtuale was a filter for his psychic fear of society, politicians, business people, environment, that he has a car accident, or that we may never find a beautiful girl. And so Piazza Virtuale was the healing. Piazza Virtuale was the healing for the public. And that's why it was hated.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't could charge the Krankenkasse for that service. It was free. Thank you.
All right, talking about this therapeutic aspect of it and also this confessional aspect of it, one format and one idea that is already in the very first drafts, in the very first outlines of the program is the confession booth, like in a church. This, of course, a lot of the things that happened in Piazza Virtuale are relevant even today. For example, this idea that you use the anonymity of the internet to expose yourself or to talk about your desires, your fears, whatsoever. And I guess this confessional played into that. So let's watch a brief clip where we see this segment of the program.
Der Beichtstuhl.
Hallo? Ich habe eine viel zu hohe Telefonrechnung.
Absolution.
Hallo? Hallo? Geil. Ich grüße im Beefy.
Keine Absolution.
Hallo, ich habe ein Problem und möchte gerne einen Rat haben. Ich habe bisher noch nie Altpapier vom Müll getrennt und fühle mich jetzt so schlecht. Außerdem habe ich ich habe Glasflaschen in den Hausmüll geschmissen. Jetzt fühle ich mich so schlecht, was soll ich denn da tun?
Keine Absolution.
Yeah, that was the confession booth. This was a segment that was never very long, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes was the usual time it was on air. Do you remember who came up with this idea?
I think we already had it in program before in Hotel Pompino. We tested it already. Hotel Pompino was a kind of game show with candidates, but using also virtual spaces with a blue box and animated digital spaces where people could react and interact. And there, this confession room, we had a prototype of it. Like certain prototypes were always developed, and we continued, and we made variations, and we found a new version for it. And so confession room came back to Piazza Virtuale.
And like I was saying, it was on air a couple of times, but then at one point also disappeared. It wasn't shown very often anymore at the end of the program. Do you know why, or do you remember what your own reaction was to this?
I mean, it was a democratic censorship we made. We said we don't want this anymore, this Catholic shit, or this evangelic shit, or this Christian shit. And I think the mosque wasn't ready yet.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't so much disappointment about what people confessed, these banalities that we just heard, but it was more, for religious reason, if I may say so.
Well, one problem was that basically Benjamin wanted to do an interactive yoga program, but he didn't finish it. Like many of the programs, we didn't finish it yet. And I think today he would be ready to make an interactive yoga program on Piazza Virtuale, I'm sure. Benjamin, what do you say?
I don't comment on this, but the problem with the confession box was, of course, to make the audience kind of walk into the direction we were pointing with the format of the show. So, because it was so open, like anything could happen, and I think that made it kind of difficult. I mean, people were of course, using like, let's say, women's coffee house for everything else, but it wasn't used among women so much, but rather by guys trying to approach the women or whatever. So this was also the problem with the confession box. I think that people use that open space to do what they want rather than like the general direction we were thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Carl is typing in the chat. This was not a problem. This was normal, but this probably gives us an occasion to briefly talk about some of the audience reaction. The show was early on known as Hello TV because a lot of people called in, only said hello, and then were so shocked to find themselves on air that they hung up again, or they didn't have anything to say, so they just kept going on with the hellos and the hellos. Is there anything you would like to say about that?
Got it.
Sound, Karl, you have to turn on the sound.
No? Sure.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So, hello is a worldwide used word. And it has a very deep meaning. It is, or it can be, spoken out with numerous millions of variation. You can say, hello. 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 You can say, hola. You can say, Turkey, hello. So, hello is used everywhere and is a very sensitive beginning of a conversation.
Yeah, but at the same time, this was...
Sorry, I was so exciting to be online.
Okay, but at the same time, this often was the only conversation there was. So, but then again, of course, some people also use this as a prank. They, use this to disturb the conversation, the communication of others with hello, 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 or they, cussed and cursed and made all kinds of noises, put the receiver next to their stereo, made music, stuff like that.
But that's the normal human being behavior.
Yeah.
They're doing it everywhere.
Well, on the internet, well, it's easier, I think, to do these things when you are, not known, if you're anonymous. Do you think, this is also the beginning of behavior that on the internet we know as troll behavior?
Well, if you have a deep insecurity in yourself, then you start to grumble around and send some noises and send something unclear till you slowly discover what is going on in yourself and in the heart of the people. And I think this is a long process.
I think from hello, hello came also from, at the beginning, hallucination. Am I really online, or is this a hallucination? And then it developed to something else, which with creation of identities, beginning of schizophrenia, beginning of multiphrenia, beginning of multiple personage. Finally, I can be another personage on television. And this became very, 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 very common.
Yeah, games with identity and playing with roles and different characters was very common In fact, there was the coffee house, which was, you know, one of the most common programs that people could just talk in and call, and a lot of people who called in pretended to be women that were men, and vice versa. Well, actually, vice versa, not so often, but yeah, this is also something we know from the internet. These games with identity, with sexual identity. So this happened on Piazza Virtuale too, to some extent. Since you were mentioning this interactive yoga program that never happened, that reminded me of one clip that the group Frauen and Technik, Women and Technology from Hamburg broadcast. They were on quite regularly. We should probably mention what these piazzettas were, because apart from the audience participation, apart from people calling in or sending faxes or chatting online via mailbox, there were these piazzettas, which were these micro studios in other cities. And one of the most active ones was Frauen und Technik, Women and Technology. And they really used the framework of television and of the show, and to really question this. So one clip, one I don't know, kind of performance that they did in particular, I think the person in front of the camera is artist Cornelia Solfrank, where most people try to do as much in front of the camera as possible and be as frenetic and as loud and as outrageous as possible. They did exactly the opposite. So can we have a brief excerpt from that clip? And I guess we can comment over that. Right, so this went on for something like 10 minutes, I believe. Any recollections of that? Because we also found out by now, we who are working on the project are to some extent, you know, we're more familiar with certain aspects and with certain programs than the creators who haven't seen most of the stuff in over 25 years. So
I'm sure Benjamin had some influence here. I'm sure he had some influence. He doesn't want to say it, no comment, but he was influencing this too.
Really?
I am sure.
Is this a still image or is this a video image?
No.
Video.
We don't have sound here for some reason, but that's actually what the people who you are still able to call in, and the people, I think in this case, I guess it was even two women who called in, they are speculating. Is this, you know, a person or not a person? Is this person alive or not? What is she trying to tell us? So this actually led to critical reflection of the program. But yeah, nothing happened. Cornelia Solfrank never, you know, reacted to any of this. She just sat there for, I think, 50 minutes without moving. This is something you don't get to see on television very often, I suppose.
This is a typical artistic performance of the 1970s, where very boring for a long time. But I want to remind that there was a very boring performance by Heidersberger when he was doing radio in the Documenta in 1986, when we were doing radio. And there, Benjamin Heidersberger, because we were doing an interesting, performing, and very sexy program. So his first program he made was having modem sound and sleeping for 1 hour. So it was premeditated. And Benjamin sometimes really likes boring stuff. And this was also a premeditation of what these kind of performances, typical 70s, but a bit with technology, a bit with sound. And so he adapted to different things in this way. And I think Benjamin inspired a lot of people doing boring performances.
Thank you.
Yeah, but to do this on television is yet, I guess, takes this to another level. Talking about taking things to another level, the next clip I would like to show is from the program segment Tazetta. And Tazetta was a program that was developed in collaboration with Taz, the German
That's politics. Politics. I don't like politics. This
Well,
politics, I'm a boarding performance, but politics, this is too much. This is too much now.
This is politics. I think it's also interesting from the point of view of technology.
The left wing, right?
The left wing.
Yeah.
What's
you
wrong
left
with
wing too? You left wing too?
What's wrong with that?
Well, I'm just asking. We have to help the context to the people here so that they know if they're in the left wing or in a meditation program or what context they are.
Okay, yeah, so Taz is this left-wing daily kind of like Liberation in France, but for some reason they always were kind of ahead of the curve in terms of technology. So in 1992 they had just switched to digital, and all their news, the whole newspaper was already on a server computer, which was very new at that time, and that's why they were able to provide news to Piazza Virtuale, and you could actually read the Taz online, sorry, not online, but on the television screens. So can we have this clip, please? I think it's also has a very cool credit sequence.
Hallo?
Ja, hallo.
Wer ist denn da?
Ja, hier ist Uwe.
Ja, hier ist Florian.
Wo kommst du denn her?
Ne, Köln.
Aha, ich komme aus Friedenau.
Ja.
Was treibt dich hier?
Hä?
Was treibt dich hierher?
Na, eigentlich nicht. Einfach mal anrufen.
Aha.
Hallo. Mir kommt es ja richtig peinlich vor, immer Hallo zu sagen. Dann muss doch irgendjemand, dann sind da anscheinend 4 Telefonleitungen geschaltet. Hallo.
Yes, so Benjamin, I think these technological innovations to some extent were your department. Can you say something about Tazetta?
I mean, I think most of the stuff was programmed by Christian Wolf. We got the new content from Taz every day by modem, so because the internet was not what we know today. And the idea was to marry the different media and use the TV to show the newspaper actually. And I think that was pretty interesting for the time. I wonder today if the user interface was the best that we could have, but anyway, and of course here's the same problem, like you listen to these guys, obviously totally uninterested what Taz is showing there, but nevertheless, I think there were some interaction between the different media in this program as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you watch the clip, you also see that somebody is gradually figuring out the interface, which is not very intuitive, I guess. But still, some person manages to use his telephone keys to start reading the newspaper. And this is kind of like surfing on the internet today. You know, you click on headlines, you get to the story, you scroll down. The story is about Pablo Escobar. So, you know, back then he was, you know, he's still around. Now they're making television shows about him. So I guess this is kind of like web surfing without the web, I guess, web surfing on television.
Now, I remember the procedure. We have been looking for a partner who can feed in news, text. And of course, the big news agencies would not participate because of. I remember there was a copyright problem already in that time, and Taz was providing that without problem. So we cooperated with them, and it was a big discussion to incorporate traditional media, which are producing text and news, and it was one television format which we developed especially for this.
I think I remember talking to the TASS news agency from Russia to provide us with content, but they wouldn't give us for free, so we couldn't do it.
That's too bad that you didn't get this really objective and absolutely non-propagandistic content and had to use TATS instead.
I mean, at the time, I was very much into scanning international press agencies, North Korea, Iran, and so on, and but we used TATS here in this program.
That was another boring project of Benjamin Heidersberger. We had a news ticker very early in the Fonton lab where we could see the other side of news daily. But I'm sure Benjamin didn't read all of it.
So enjoy your dinner. That looks good.
Tilman, did you have contact to Ralf Klever from TATS?
Yes, and he said he couldn't remember anything, so we didn't interview him. But yeah, that's funny that the same person who was in charge of the project back then, who was in charge of the computer department, as they called it at that time, is still working for TATS today. Let's see, one project, since Mike keeps complaining how boring this is, one part of the program that was usually very lively was called Interact with Piazza People. And that was actually broadcast live from Kassel. It wasn't on very often, but I think these are some of the real highlights of Piazza Virtuale. And the clip we're going to watch now has this Russian street band. And I would think, you know, nobody remembers where the street band comes from, but they're playing live in Kassel. And the audience is asked to interact with their music. And the clip starts out really badly. The lady who calls in, you know, at first doesn't cooperate or doesn't interact with the band at all. But then occasionally she gets it. In the end, I think what they do together is quite interesting, pleasant to hear. So yeah, let's hear that. Let's see that.
Das war aber toll.
So, jetzt kannst du singen.
Was soll ich denn singen?
Sing dein Lieblingslied.
Moment mal. Also. It's been 7 hours and 15.
Hallo.
War das gut?
So, und jetzt versucht es mal auf diese Rhythmik.
Moment. It's been 7 since you took your love away. I go out every night and sleep on day. Since you took your love away. Since you've been gone, I can do whatever I want. I can see whomever I choose. I can eat my dinner in a fancy restaurant. But nothing is an unknown.
Und weiter.
War gut, ne?
Ja, das war bei der Container City.
Yeah. So, does anybody remember now where this band came from? Because so far nobody has any recollection.
I don't have my hand.
That was the Container City. That was during the Container City. Some visitors came by and made a performance, I think.
Mm.
Do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I'm sure it was some refugees who had no permission to play.
Mm.
Early refugees, early German refugees.
Yeah, I would think they were, you know, some street band that was picked up in the pedestrian zone of Kassel. Is my microphone on? Yeah. All right. So last but not least, we have a longer clip from the Piazzetta in Ghent, and they are connected with the Piazzetta in Paris. I think there was a total of something like 30 Piazzettas. Some broadcast quite regularly, some broadcast only occasionally. And yeah, here the Piazzetta from Ghent has this phony, I don't want to say too much. They have this art expert, and he, this art history professor, and he gives his professional opinion on Piazza Virtuale. And then there's this interesting interaction with the Piazzetta in Vienna, sorry, in Paris. And
Paris, c'était les Français, monsieur.
Yeah, it's probably one of the very few times where there's actually a discussion of art within the program. So let's hear that.
I am with Professor Alfred Kudilski, which is a classical art specialist. And the debate of today will be classical art, is it better than modern art?
Right.
What's art for you? Do you think you're doing art now? Hello?
Yes, really.
You
Hello,
do,
Mike.
you do. You think that?
Hello, Mike. You can see a screen,
Can you
like a
understand me?
painting, and a composition with colors, and we try to express what kind of world we are living now.
Colors.
And that's an expression of art.
No, not for me. I'm terribly sorry.
Oh,
So,
if you look, the Renaissance, you know the painting in the Renaissance?
Oh yes, of course.
Fra Angelico, this
Yeah.
kind of thing like this, with the
That's art.
perspective,
That's
and
art.
this
That's
kind
the
of thing like
view
this.
and everything. That's-
So they
that's
use,
art.
in this time, the best medium you can use.
Hello?
It was the new form of painting in the Renaissance. And today we have another medium. It's an electronic medium, and this is TV.
Yes, but I'm terribly sorry. That's no art for the moment. So I wait until you show me something.
It's just a representation of the modern world.
We're just talking together. Okay.
During
But
a long
what do you
time, during a
personally-
very long time, the practice of art was just to create some objects. And now, with these electronic forms, it's possible to express some point of view, artistic point of view, in the process of the communication. And in this way, this communication is not to grow, to get information or to get some profit about the world or to talk with you. It's just to express in the lifetime in these possibilities to be present. It's another space, and this space is an artistic form of expression.
Yeah, it's a very technical, it's modern, but it's still just communication. That's my opinion.
That's my opinion too. I agree with you. There is no aggressivity in this.
No, I thought it's really just communication. We communicate now.
And
What
communication
does
is no art.
With art.
It can be art, but it's no art for the moment.
Expressing your
What we are
feelings.
doing, it's no art. Is it
What is
you're saying?
classical art for you?
Art is
What is
something
art?
that we are talking. There's no any construction in what we are doing.
Art for me is expressing of feelings. So somebody's giving something, somebody's seeing it, so getting it. A kind of communication, but one way only.
One-way
When
communication.
you look at this kind of programs, it's not a normal TV programs. Because all the composition with the text, with the colors, with the pictures and kind of thing like this, it's a composition. And you understand something through the contents the people use in the mailbox that I say now with my voice. You're standing in the other side here, in the other side here, yeah. You know, and that is a form of practice, like a painter in front of a space, to create some contents and some feeling. Go through, the people will look what is going.
Yes, and they can also act on it. They can call and they can say, I don't agree.
Hello. It's a collective form of art. It's not individualistic, it's not an object, it's just a process of understanding about, maybe it's communication, right? But it's a practice, artistic practice about communication.
I love you. Hello, wish you to say something about the fact that what we're doing is art or not. What is your opinion?
My opinion?
Yes.
Nothing.
You don't have any opinion. Why do you call this program?
Weil es Spaß macht und schmeckt.
Es macht Spaß und schmeckt.
Es macht Spaß und schmeckt. Geil, oder?
Sicher.
Nach was schmeckt es?
Milky Way.
Ah,
Ach toll, und schmeckt
Mars.
toll.
Und Mars hast du nicht gern?
Oh, eher Snickers.
Schmeckt das auch nach Mars?
Snickers?
Ja.
Nee, Snickers schmeckt nicht nach Mars.
Wichse schmeckt auch gut.
Okay, thank you for giving us your preference for the candy bars. I think we are arriving at the end of the transmission. I don't know. sometimes, you know, they cut the program just like this, and we don't have any chronometer.
Okay, this was a conversation about art that turns into nonsense. I guess, again, I have this...
what is sense and what is nonsense? What is sense and what is nonsense?
Yeah, right. That's what I was about to ask.
Well, the first nonsense thing is that people dominate with language. And so the German people were speaking to French people who were trying to speak English. So in all the piazzettas, we had different languages, and partly we had a local program in Latvia, which was on television, and people were talking German. So people had to adapt and to learn how to get into communication with the other and get their level. So interesting enough, I want to make a little homage. The person who was on the Piazzetta of Paris was Christian van der Borg, a media artist who developed a lot of things. And he died from Corona 6 weeks ago in a hospital. So in memoriam, Christian van der Borg, who was a kind of really protagonist for the modern thinking against this. We need a painting to be artistic. We need a painting to be artistic. So he was...
I'm sorry to hear that about Christian. I didn't actually know that yet. But since you mentioned Corona, let's this be the last question to wrap the evening up. All of a sudden, we are doing all these teleconferences all the time. We cannot meet physically anymore, and I keep having these flashbacks of Gogh TV. Do you have, any thoughts on that? Because I think, many of the things you pioneered back then all of a sudden have become very.
I would like to present here.
Wait.
Shortly, I would like to present. This is Henry Lakis. He's the son of Baiba Ripa, who was doing Piazzetta in Riga before he was born. And he's using this medium regularly today, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello.
And
Especially, okay. So,
Karel.
That's the good old Van Gogh TV echo that you kept having whenever somebody called in without turning the volume of the television down.
I know Karel Dudesek is doing this on purpose.
Yes, I think so.
He's trying to put some disturbing in.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you. Please, Karel Dudesek.
So it's important to know that most of the people on Piazza Virtuale has been speaking bad English, really bad English. And especially when it went into intellectual filtration, and they have been French, because the French anyhow speak bad English. This is by nature. So the discussion goes in a kind of a very simplistic way about where everybody tries to be very wise, but in English, no way. They should speak French. Then such a discussion would be much better. That is my comment to the last session of that thing, because it was an international program. Russia, Riga, Latvia, Lavendia,
Macedonia, Italia, Francia, Spain.
So everybody was speaking just a common language, which is English, and most of the people spoke bad English. Like
Moluccan English.
The best Englishman is Mike Hens, which is a Native American gaucho. He speaks good English. So French, German, we could speak him. Benjamin speaks very good German. I speak a little bit German. So this is the
Austrian. You speak Austrian.
Mm. But to return to this Corona issue, any last thoughts on that? Benjamin, I think we talked about that before.
Yeah.
Corrupt Corona. Benjamin, please, sorry.
Thank you, Mike. I think that, I mean, we're using Zoom here in this conversation, and we already see the problems of Zoom, like the user interface is really terrible, actually, and the representation of people in the virtual space could be much more improved. I mean, the use of avatars, the use of some language which represents the space, which represents the position of the people, and so on. This could be all introduced into a program like Zoom, and I'm pretty sure they will do that. Start to use some other user interface, and we had some experience with exploring that already 30 years ago.
I'm particularly disappointed with the backgrounds. With Zoom, I think this could be much more creative, not just some picture or some animation, but you could do much more interesting things with that. Maybe they should hire artists at Zoom to come up with a more interesting and entertaining interface.
I mean, I would guess their problems are different right now, but eventually they need a better user interface.
All right, thank you very much for this quarantine version of our evening